My wife has just been told she's diabetic, refused to listen to any of my advice, but she's listening more these days. Good. Small steps, Scotty, small steps. Small steps. People, sometimes it's very difficult. I mean, cognitive dissonance. I basically used to argue against the Atkins diet. I was morbidly obese, and I just argued continually against my brother Sean and told him that he didn't know what he was talking about and Atkins was shit. He had tried it when he was younger, and I just thought it was wrong completely because I'd been so brainwashed myself. So, yeah, look how far I've come. So basically, but I had to go through a massive illness before because from when you're in a professional technical field like I am. My field comes out of the engineering. You have a tendency of thinking that other people in their field are just going to be as professional and scientific and rigorous as you are. And so you don't look into what they're saying. You just accept it at face value. I realize that is very wrong. Nowadays, I realize just because somebody's in another profession doesn't mean that that profession is operating at the same standards as your profession. And that was a bit of an eye-opener for me. And it takes time because we've been conditioned. Remember, look at how civilization, up until the beginning of the 20th century, we didn't even have cars. Then we had cars, aeroplanes, antibiotics, vaccines, all sorts of things. Terrible diseases were slain. The ability to commute from one part of the planet to the other was quick. People basically grew up believing that science and the scientists can never be wrong, can always basically solve things, can have created the modern world, and can never be, and we should listen to them as an authority, like a religious authority. Nearly, it's sort of it's waning now because people are slightly more cynical. They've realized there's a lot of bullshit out there, but for a long time, that's what we believed, and we were conditioned in that way of thinking because we saw our society was transformed massively in such a short amount of time, within less than 100 years. How could you not basically consider that these marvels, just have to look at the old cinemas, the old movies, and the old shows that had covered these sort of things. They marveled. It was like a new religion. And so the guy in the white coat was never wrong. We know since then that's not the case. And even in my field, there are debates about how, in terms of mapping certain things, how they should be done, some of the practices, some of the standards that we should use. There are disagreements and all that. Most people outside, they look at it, they go, oh, what a wonderful mapping product you produce. But behind the scenes, there are a lot of contentious debates and arguments about how to do it. That happens in every field, you think you get the best because you go through a process of, where you end up with the best thing everybody agreeing to, and to those standards that actually they make sense, or an engineer, comes up with the best formula to make sure the bridge won't fall. And so we accept that as sort of a gospel type thing, nearly. Unfortunately, that's a wrong way of thinking, So we realize now that there's a lot of contentious things. If you take a look at physics, there's a lot of contentiousness, M theory, string theory, and all that, which I reject, and fell apart because they failed to show in the Hadron Collider in CERN the sort of energy particles that they were expecting, which was great because that means we go back to the anthropic principle and the validation that the probability of consciousness emerging out of the so-called randomness or whatever is unlikely. So there must have been potentially the notion of a creator comes back into the scheme of things, so to speak. But for a long time, because of the way things were, we believed it. They could never be wrong. They'd done so many infant mortality was down, everything was improving. But at the time, in the 70s and onwards, that's when the decline started. That's when the corruption of science actually started. And it wasn't only in the nutritional field, it was happening in a lot of fields at the same time. And we were losing our way. We became too high and mighty, thinking that we're perfect. And yeah, we lost our way big time. And so, look, I understand your wife because I was in that same sort of mindset. So hopefully she'll find a way out of that mindset without doing too much damage to her body.